A steady rain slicked the concrete sidewalks of Metro City, clinging to the sparkling glass towers that rose into the low-hanging clouds. Beneath one of these towers, a tall man with dark hair, a crisp suit, and a gold lapel pin stepped from his private car. On the surface, he looked like any driven executive, broad-shouldered with an intense gaze softened only by the ghost of a polite smile. Few would guess that behind his suave demeanour lay centuries of cunning and might, concealed under warm-looking skin. Fewer still would suspect that he was not human at all. He was a dragon named Dracus, who had first flown over these lands long before the city was founded. In the guise of billionaire tech mogul Adrian Drakovich, he had shaped the world around him to his advantage. He owned a cutting-edge technology conglomerate, produced innovations that kept a city in awe, and doled out philanthropic gifts at just the right moment to maintain public favour. It was easy, in this modern age, for a dragon to hide behind the shimmer of wealth and technology. In the lobby of Drakovich Innovations, the security guard nodded as Adrian strode through the glass doors. Here, polished marble floors stretched beneath recessed lighting. Massive screens displayed the latest software interfaces the company was developing. He walked straight to the elevator, key-carded into the executive suite. Above and below, in every corner of this building, were concealed sensors and security measures. Even if an intruder managed to get in, they would be trapped in loops of swirling illusions that Adrian had coded with the help of ancient runes. Magic blended seamlessly with technology, a hallmark of his careful craftsmanship. Yet his chief concern today was not about board meetings or product launches. He could sense the old magic stirring in the city's underbelly. The abandoned subway tunnels far below the bustling metropolis had become the stage for a brewing conflict. Reports had surfaced of strange creatures lurking in the darkness. Adrian knew such secrets were rarely coincidences, especially in a city where supernatural remnants still thrived in the lonely corners abandoned by human progress. He slipped out of the elevator into his top-floor office, where the floor-to-ceiling windows gave a glittering view of the skyline. A single drone hovered silently in the corner, awaiting his commands. His personal assistant, Lydia, greeted him just inside, offering a tablet. She was a mortal, albeit one who had shown remarkable intuition years ago when she noticed some oddities in the data. Rather than having her memory wiped, Adrian plucked her from obscurity and made her his right hand. Over time, she learned bits and pieces of the truth. She served with a kind of unwavering loyalty that was part gratitude, part fascination. "You asked me to watch the news feeds, sir." Lydia's eyes glinted with a mixture of apprehension and curiosity. "There was another incident in the old subway lines. A group of teenage urban explorers went missing overnight." Adrian frowned. "Are they still unaccounted for?" "No sign," she answered quietly. "Their social media feed ended abruptly. A friend who wasn't with them alerted police, but the official search has turned up nothing." Adrian suspected the missing explorers had strayed into the domain of those beneath the city's skin. The Fey courts that dwelt there had grown restless. More accurately, a rogue faction of Fey resented his presence in Metro City and wanted to reassert old laws that predated humanity's sprawl. "I see," Adrian said. "Keep close tabs on any further developments. Put out a feeler in the community discreetly. If the rumor mills start churning about mysterious abductions, we'll have to get ahead of it." "Yes, sir," Lydia replied. Adrian let her go and reclined in his high-backed chair, turning his gaze outward toward the drizzle. He drummed his long fingers on the desk, conjuring faint drifts of magic that crackled in the air. Nearly 5 centuries old, he had once roosted in the misty mountains across the ocean, content to watch the rise and fall of ancient empires. But the modern era not only enthralled him, it offered him a certain anonymity. Technologies advanced so rapidly that people rarely thought to look for magic at all. That afternoon, Adrian left the office early. Nobody questioned it. He was the boss, after all. Lydia had arranged a nondescript SUV for him in the parking garage. Once alone in the vehicle, he flicked on a custom device on the dash. It gave a muffled hiss and projected illusions over the windows from the outside. Anyone who looked in would see only tinted glass. Inside, spontaneously, Adrian's human visage melted away. His skin shimmered, and his eyes glowed with hidden power. Faint scales flickered around his temples, though he wasn't in dragon form entirely. He drove past the border of the city's vibrant centre into the older districts where cracked sidewalks fronted shuttered shops. He parked near a dilapidated subway entrance, a location that had been locked to the public for decades. Rusted metal gates cracked open beneath his firm pull. A stale wind rose from the shadows. His footsteps echoed down the crumbling stairs and toward the deserted platforms below. His nostrils twitched at the scent of rotting mildew and the stale traces of arcane energy. Once elaborate mosaic murals were chipped and smeared with graffiti in several languages, some human, some decidedly not. A subtle luminescence pulsed from beneath Adrian's collar. It was a warding talisman he had crafted centuries ago, hidden in the shape of his tie-pin. It flickered to life when it sensed magic stirring. The tunnels here were thick with spells woven by Fae. He advanced deeper into the labyrinth of tracks and subterranean passages. It was quiet, until an ethereal whisper sighed against the walls. Adrian froze, honing his senses. If the Fae had decided to lure humans inside, there was a reason. This might be a trap, either for the humans or for him. He turned off his flashlight and advanced carefully, aware that his draconic sight could make use of the faint glow radiating from runic markings overhead. Amid the silence, a single speck of light appeared far down the corridor. He pressed himself against the damp wall, heart thrumming. The light shifted, and soon he made out a slight figure, barely 4 feet tall, carrying a lantern. The figure wore tattered clothes, more resemblant of a scarecrow than a human. Pointed ears protruded from under a ragged hood. Fae, no question, and from the clan of brigands that had split off from the Unseelie court centuries ago. The Fae's lantern revealed a second figure stepping forward, a tall, statuesque woman with auburn hair braided in loops around her sharp features. Adrian recognized her instantly, Lady Helene, an influential noble of the world beyond mortal vision. Her beauty was so striking that it could momentarily ensnare weaker minds. He sensed her presence well before she spoke. "You should not wander alone in these tunnels, my Lord Drakovich," she called in a voice that slipped off the walls like a silver blade, "lest you find yourself entangled in matters that do not concern you." Stepping into the open, Adrian let the faint glow skim over his features. "I think we both know these matters concern me greatly. I hear rumors of the Unseelie fracturing further. Innocents lured into your domain and not returning? Care to explain?" Lady Helene's eyes, amber-laced, narrowed. "What do ye care for the fate of a few mortals?" She cocked her head. "Or have ye grown so fond of these humans, living in their city and protecting their feeble ways?" Adrian's pulse quickened, but he kept his voice steady. "Their numbers don't concern me, but their disappearance does. I value order in this city. Too much public attention to these vanishings will draw the mortal authorities. They have technologies that, while they can't fully detect our kind, can complicate our existence. I have no desire for that kind of chaos." Helene's stare was cool. "We can handle mortals well enough, but your presence, ancient serpent, is another matter. You meddle in crises that don't concern you. You claim it's to protect your business, but we know you have your own horde to protect. Power pooled in your towers. We can sense it." The smaller Fae at her side nodded, eyes glowing in the lantern's reflection. Helene continued in a murmur that still echoed. "There's a war brewing, Drakovich. The modern world is forging new alliances. Perhaps it is time for the Fae to reclaim what was lost centuries ago." Adrian's chest tightened. He remembered a time when an entire cadre of Fae tried to slay him in his lair for his hoard of arcane relics. He had slain dozens, driving them away. But new generations rose, hungry for dominion. You would risk inciting open conflict with me. A flicker of mocking amusement danced across Helene's face. So dramatic, a conflict with a single dragon might be a worthwhile gamble, especially if we can harness your technology for our own ends. These old tunnels connect to richly seeded ley lines, and you, my dear Liz, his body tensed, the edges of his mouth itching for the promise of flame. But he reined in his temper. A pitched battle in these tunnels would only complicate things. I suggest a parley, he said carefully. We can discuss terms. The city is big enough for all of us. Is that so? She purred. Very well. Tomorrow, at midnight. We will meet in the Labyrinth Station. You know the place. Bring terms of concession, or you'll find us far less inclined to talk. A thin smile curved her lips. Then she and her companion vanished, lantern and all, in a sudden swirl of darkness. Adrian stood alone, scowling at the emptiness. The tunnels pressed all around him with dangerous potential. He needed allies, preferably discreet ones. If things went downhill, that parley would devolve into open confrontation. He returned to his SUV and drove back to his tower, letting the illusions wash over him again as he drifted into his human shape. Lydia was waiting for him in his office. Worry etched across her face. News had spread about the vanished explorers. Parent groups were pressuring the city officials to search deeper. When souls vanish in places where mortals are forbidden, Adrian said, it's rarely an accident. The Fae are stirring. He rubbed the bridge of his nose. I need you to reach out to an old friend of ours, Melicia. Melicia was a mage of some renown who specialized in bridging magical wards with modern technology. She had aided Adrian on multiple occasions when he required illusions powerful enough to fool even skilled supernatural observers. If she was still in the city, her cunning might be the key to turning this standoff to his advantage. Lydia nodded, tapping instructions into her tablet. I'll see if she's still in that old greenhouse by the wharf. She didn't like to stray far from water. Good, Adrian said. Have her come tomorrow evening. We have until midnight to devise a plan. The next evening, long after most employees had gone home, Melicia breezed into Adrian's office. A willowy woman with platinum hair streaked neon pink, she looked both eccentric and refined. Her left eye glinted with a gilded hue from a magical transplant. Dropping into a chair, she exhaled dramatically. I thought you'd never need me again, she teased, crossing one leg over the other. Then Lydia's message arrives, telling me there's trouble in the tunnels. She arched a brow. Fae business, I assume. They want a foothold in the city, Ahren replied matter-of-factly. They've been capturing human stragglers who wander too close, and now they want me to yield or risk war. Melicia nodded slowly. I heard rumors. The Fae are fracturing. Some want alliances. Others want to tear everything down and reclaim the old ways. She shrugged. So what's your plan? I want to negotiate, but if that fails, I need a fail-safe. He leaned forward. I'd like you to craft a device, something that can sever their illusions, force them to see the truth. Once illusions are stripped away, their power is halved. Keep it hidden so I can deploy it if needed. Melicia smiled. I can do that. I'll weave runic sequences into a small transmitter. It'll disrupt local illusions within a contained radius. Even highly skilled Fae should be affected. With that settled, he gave her access to a lab on the storage level. She spent hours assembling crystals, wires, and coded glyphs. By nightfall, she placed in his palm a device no bigger than a smartphone. Activate this, she said, and illusions in its immediate area will unravel for about 5 minutes. At 10 minutes shy of midnight, Adrian descended alone into the deserted Labyrinth Station. The name wasn't an exaggeration. One of the city's strangest and oldest transit hubs, it had so many side passages and connecting routes that officials eventually sealed it off. The lights overhead flickered and hummed faintly. Graffiti scrawled across the walls depicted strange shapes, often too complex or inhuman to be the work of common artists. Water dripped from overhead pipes, forming shallow puddles on the cracked floor. He crossed the central platform and saw Lady Helene approaching, accompanied by 3 heavily armed Fey guards. Their features shimmered briefly, illusion shifting as they walked over wards etched into the concrete. A wave of tension crackled in the air. Adrian's instincts told him that more were hidden in the shadows, waiting. A hush fell. Helene stepped forward, arms folded elegantly. "You came alone. That's either foolish or arrogant." He inclined his head. "One does not bring an army to a parley unless one wishes to provoke war." She laughed softly, though her eyes were cold. "Well then, state your terms. I propose we honor a pact of non-interference. My enterprise will not pursue the Fae in the tunnels, and you in turn will cease harassing mortals. Provide safe passage for those who accidentally wander near, or at least turn them away without harm." Her face hardened. "That hardly benefits us. We want freedom to claim territory. Modern development has forced us into the caverns for too long." Adrian nodded, controlling his exasperation. "Mortals outnumber you 1,000-to-1. An open conflict with them, and with me, would deprive you of the secrecy and safety of these tunnels. If you provoke the humans, eventually their machines will come sniffing after you, loaded with lethal hardware. Believe me, they are relentless once they suspect there's something unusual to uproot." She regarded him with a lingering silence. "We had hoped for a division of territory. But you want us to stay hidden. You are the hidden one, Dragon. You do not belong to humans any more than we do. Why side with them?" "Because it suits my interests," Adrian said simply. "I have built a life here. I am no friend of mortal ignorance, but I want stability." One of the guards, dark-haired, lithe-stepped forward, scowling. "This is a trap. A serpent does not bargain in good faith." Adrian felt his temper snap at the slur. Old instincts, primal and draconic, surged in him. He forced himself to remain measured. "I am offering you a chance. Harm no more humans. Stay out of public view and I won't move against you." "Let me guess," Helene said icily. "If we refuse, you'll use your technology to root us out." He offered no immediate denial. His silence was an answer of its own. Helene's eyes flashed. She looked at her guards, then back at Adrian. "Then we have nothing left to discuss." In one smooth motion, she raised her hand, and the darkness behind her stirred. Runes flared, painting the air with shadowy shapes. Half a dozen Fey warriors flickered into being, illusions peeling away. They brandished weapons made of shimmering, black-edged metal. The air thickened with residual magic. Adrian's wards flared, a shimmering aura around him. "You're a fool to come alone," Lady Helene hissed. "If we bind you here, your power becomes ours. Imagine the knowledge we can glean from your empire." Adrian's lips parted, revealing a hint of sharpened teeth. "I was hoping it wouldn't come to this." Before her warriors could close in, Adrian reached into his coat for the device Milicia had crafted. A single button press triggered a pulse that rippled through the station. The glyphs on the floor trembled, their illusions unraveling like broken threads. The Fae's illusions faded, revealing the full extent of their ambush. Nearly a dozen heavily armed and heavily glamoured figures. But they too lost certain defensive enchantments, exposing themselves fully to Adrian's senses. He let the wave of his power rise. His human shape shimmered, revealing scaled arms and taloned claws. Golden reptilian eyes shone with ancient fury. He unleashed a deep, resonant roar that shook dust from the rafters, although he couldn't fully transform in this cramped space without bringing the ceiling down on them all. Helene reeled in surprise. "He has a dispelling artifact," she snarled. "Attack!" The Fey soldiers lunged. Adrian moved with preternatural grace, claws scraping the concrete as he sidestepped a blade that crackled with arcane lightning. He battered one warrior aside, sending him crashing into a pillar. Flames flickered in Adrian's throat, and he exhaled a controlled burst of fire. The station lit up in a burst of orange and gold, and one of the Fae shrieked in agony. Sparks danced across the tracks. They pressed the attack, launching spells that whirled with shards of black energy. Adrian's wards absorbed some of it, but one bolt grazed his arm, burning through his suit and searing flesh. He hissed in pain. Another warrior darted in from behind, aiming a thrust at his back. Adrian rolled forward, slashing with his talons. The warrior collapsed with a grunt. Illusions shattered. Helene, eyes blazing, chanted a potent incantation. The very shadows coalesced into barbed tentacles writhing through the air, seeking to ensnare Adrian's neck and limbs. He poured more draconic might into resisting, snapping the iron-like limbs of darkness with savage snarls of flame. The device in his coat flickered, continuing to disrupt illusions. Fey illusions pulsed uncertainly, limbs momentarily glitching into half-bird, half-human forms beings from a deep old magic. It was horrifying and mesmerizing in equal measure. Adrian realized the disruptor wouldn't last long. He needed to strike decisively. He ducked under a thrust and slammed a shoulder into a Fey warrior, knocking him flat. A slash of his claws took out another. Then he locked eyes with Helene. She was weaving her strongest spells with graceful, furious motions. He parted his jaws, summoning a swirl of gold-orange flame that gathered in his chest. Their gazes locked, Fey, noble, and ancient dragon. Centuries of animosity between their kinds flared in that moment. Adrian exhaled in inferno. Helene's eyes went wide, and her final incantation dissolved as she conjured a protective shield. The flames battered her defenses, scorching the air around her. She staggered back, biting out curses in a language older than the city itself. Sensing the tide turning, some of her warriors tried to flank Adrian, but he spun around, slashing with regal fury. Another blast of flame, another ragged shriek. The station glowed with ephemeral light, highlighting the brutal confrontation. Helene's shield cracked. She could endure no more. With a tremor that shook the platform, she tapped one of her braces. Dark energy blossomed, and suddenly she and her remaining guards vanished into twisting shadow. The air stilled, filled with the stench of scorched concrete and charred illusions. Sirens wailed in the distance above, perhaps alerted by the vibrations. Adrian's breath came in ragged puffs of smoke as he forced his body to diminish the partial transformation. Debris littered the station. He clutched at his injured arm, wincing. But the parley had ended decidedly in his favor. He fumbled back to the disruptor. The last flicker of runic energy faded, the device's light blinking off. Milicia would probably scold him for pushing it to its limits. He needed to get out of here before the police arrived. He longed to chase Helene, to ensure she wouldn't regroup and attack again, but caution prevailed. She wouldn't be so bold next time. He had proven the lengths he would go to protect his domain. Stepping over the unconscious or wounded Fae, he made his way up the labyrinth of corridors. The battle had been swift, but he felt every wounded muscle. Back on the main street, the rain had subsided, leaving the asphalt dark and slick under the streetlights. Blending back into his human form, he slipped into his SUV. He suppressed a shiver as adrenaline drained away. The scars of centuries of conflict had taught him to accept the inevitability of further battles. But as he watched the silent rise of the city's skyscrapers in the rearview mirror, he felt the same old pang of longing for simpler times. When he reached his tower, Lydia stood at the executive entrance. She gazed at his torn suit and bruised face. "I take it negotiations didn't go smoothly," she said with a worried crease of her brow. He shook his head. "They ended more or less how I expected." Her voice softened. "Did you manage to protect everyone?" He thought of the missing explorers. He had found no trace of them in the station. Perhaps they were deeper in the tunnels, or had escaped, or, worse, had met a grim fate. "I'm not sure," he murmured quietly. "But the Fae won't try the same tactic again. For now, we've bought time." He left instructions to quietly send teams into the old lines with protective wards, searching for survivors. Then he slumped into his office chair. letting the city's lights wash over him from the windows. He was tired, but there was a glimmer of satisfaction. He had faced the rogue Fae at last, shown them he would not be intimidated. Despite centuries of struggle, it seemed that in every era, old enemies emerged to exploit new opportunities. His greatest triumph was not in amassing wealth or claiming territories. It was in adapting, in weaving his draconic legacy into the threads of modern innovation. Someday soon, the Fae would likely regroup. Helene's anger would not dissipate. But Metro City was his dominion, a realm of steel and circuits, of cunning illusions and hidden magic. He would remain vigilant, and he would continue advancing the frontier of technology, blending it seamlessly with ancient power. Down in the abandoned tunnels, the shadows might stir again. Yet as long as he lived, he would hold his ground. Because dragons, after all, were guardians of their hordes. And Adrian Dracovich's horde now included every neon-lit street and towering skyscraper under the city's stormy skies. He was ready to defend it, no matter how many rival Fae rose from the depths. And so he sat, gaze fixed on the shimmering horizon, preparing for the war that brewed below Metro City's feet.